I still remember the night like it had etched itself into my skin. I was 12, home alone for the first time in our big, empty house. My parents had gone out for dinner, and my older brother, Zach, had promised he'd be back in a few hours. At first, I felt a rush of freedom. The quiet house smelled faintly of laundry detergent and old carpet. I thought about watching a scary movie, thinking it would be thrilling. The den was dark, the TV flickering shadows across the walls. Halfway through the movie, every creak of the floor, every gust of wind against the windows, made me flinch. My stomach churned at the fridge clicking on in the kitchen. I convinced myself it was only my imagination. But when the loud crash from the movie made me jump, I ran upstairs like a coward, brushing my teeth as fast as I could in the bathroom that connected to my room. Eventually, I grabbed my Xbox and started playing Call of Duty Zombies, trying to calm down. The hours blurred. And then I heard it, the front door closing. Relief washed over me. Zach was back. But the footsteps that followed sounded wrong. Slow, deliberate, heavier than his usual clumsy stomp. Something didn't feel right. I crept to the window. No car in the driveway. Panic clawed at my chest. My bedroom door was locked, and I knew I couldn't rely on it. I squeezed into the small crawl-in closet built into the wall and held my breath. The seconds stretched into eternity. Then, the door opened. Footsteps creaked across the floor. Drawers scraped. Something shifted in the room, dragging across the carpet. My heart thudded in my ears, each beat louder than the last. I prayed it was Zach, that he was messing with me. But deep down, I knew. I wasn't alone. Minutes or maybe hours passed. My mind spun with every possible horror. And then I heard it, Zach's voice calling my name, panicked and loud. I bolted out of the closet, trembling, and the room confirmed my worst fear. Drawers were pulled out, electronics missing, my personal things scattered. Whoever had been here wasn't just messing around. The police came. Reports were filed. My parents returned at dawn. Zach was furious at himself, my dad furious at him. I wasn't punished, but I couldn't shake the memory. The fear, the paralyzing fear of hiding in that closet, listening to someone move around my room, knowing they could find me at any second. And I knew then, even at 12, that some nightmares don't end when the sun rises. Even after the police left, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still in the house. Every creak, every whistle of the wind against the walls made my skin crawl. I slept with the lights on, my bedroom door locked, closet still slightly ajar as if testing me. I couldn't tell if I was terrified of what had already happened or of what was coming next. That night, I woke to the sound of soft tapping against my window. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then it became deliberate, rhythmic, almost like someone was counting the seconds. My heart froze. I didn't move, barely breathing, listening. Whoever had been in my room before, maybe they weren't gone. I grabbed my phone and dialed Zach, shaking as I whispered the story. He told me to stay put, that he and Dad were on their way, but it would take 10 minutes. 10 minutes felt like an eternity. Then I heard it. The slow slide of the closet door in my room. My stomach dropped. My eyes locked on the dark opening. A shadow emerged. Tall. Lean. The dim light from the street barely outlined it, but I knew who or what it was. My voice caught in my throat. I couldn't scream. The figure moved closer, dragging something across the floor, something metallic that clinked with each step. My brain raced, trying to figure out if I could make it to the door, but the fear had me pinned. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The figure stood still, watching me. I swear I could feel its eyes drilling into me. I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy flashlight, and held it like a weapon, trembling, waiting for it to move. The tension stretched. Then the voice came, low and familiar, chilling in its wrongness. "I know you're alone." The doorknob rattled. I dropped the flashlight and bolted, diving toward the hall. My parents' voices echoed from downstairs, urgent, full of panic. I ran, tripping over the carpet, not daring to look back. They were there, blocking the figure's path as it lunged. A struggle, heavy thuds, and the briefest flash of a knife. And then nothing. Silence. The next morning, the police returned. They found the window ajar, but no one inside. Nothing was missing this time except for my sense of safety. My parents hugged me, relief and fear tangled in their voices, but I didn't feel safe. I never have. The house felt different. Cold. Waiting. And every time I hear a floorboard creak, I remember the shadow, the slow tap on the window, the metallic clink in the dark. Some nightmares, I learned, don't end. They follow you, waiting for the moment you feel alone again. And I knew, no matter how many doors I locked, no matter how bright the lights burned, I would never feel that house was mine alone again. It was during spring break when I realized that being home alone wasn't as safe as I thought. My parents were out of town, and I had the house to myself for the night. I was scrolling through my phone when I got a call from Mason, one of my classmates. He sounded desperate, almost panicked, asking if he could drop off Neil at my house. I hesitated. Neil had been acting strange lately, laughing at nothing, muttering about conspiracies, and staring at people in class like he could see something invisible. Mason promised it would only be for a few hours. Then he said something that made me give in. He'd let me use his vape pen if I agreed. I sighed, cursing myself for letting something like that persuade me, but I agreed. I could already feel the unease crawling up my spine as I waited by the door. When they arrived, Neil stepped out of the car with that same vacant, unsettling smile. His eyes were too wide, his movements jerky, like he was caught between control and chaos. Mason grabbed his shoulder firmly, whispering something urgently that I couldn't hear. Neil nodded slowly, almost too calmly, then turned toward me with that same eerie grin. I invited him inside, trying to mask my unease. The first few minutes were quiet, almost normal. Then, without warning, he asked if all the doors in the house were locked. My stomach sank. I confirmed they were, but his blank stare made me want to double-check every lock. He lingered near the kitchen drawers as I grabbed a bottle of water. My nerves tightened as I noticed him slowly sliding open the silverware drawer, lingering over the knives. Before I could react, I lunged and slammed it shut. He chuckled softly, unnervingly, and stepped back, tilting his head as if I were overreacting. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. I realized that this wasn't just strange behavior, this was dangerous. He was unpredictable, unhinged, and I was completely alone. I told him we should go outside for some air, anything to get him away from the kitchen. He agreed with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I led him out through the laundry room to the driveway, letting him step out first while I fumbled with my shoes. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely tie them. I locked the door as soon as he stepped outside, trying to catch my breath. I immediately called Mason, explaining every detail. He was mortified, admitting that Neil had been reading a manifesto during their drive, convinced he had to act violently to protect himself. Panic surged through me. I had no idea how close I had come to something truly catastrophic. I spent the rest of the night hyper-aware, checking every window, every door, and keeping every knife in the kitchen within reach. Even with Mason's reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had almost happened, and the thought of how quickly it could have spiraled out of control left me trembling. After locking Neil out, I barely slept. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of the wind outside felt amplified, like a countdown. My parents were still out of town, and I refused to go near the kitchen. Every knife, every sharp object, I kept close as if they were shields against the unknown. I couldn't shake the image of Neil's blank, smiling face, or the way he lingered over the knives. Around midnight, I heard the sound of tires scraping gravel. My heart sank. I peeked through the blinds. No Mason, no Neil, just the quiet darkness of the street. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, that Mason had taken him home, but the unease lingered. Then came a sound that froze my blood, the doorknob rattling. Slow, deliberate, Someone was trying to get in. I grabbed the bat from my room and crept to the back of the house, eyes darting to every shadow. The sliding door in the kitchen wasn't just rattling, it was moving, inch by inch. I could hear someone breathing on the other side, soft, calm, but wrong. Neil. My stomach churned. Somehow he had returned. Somehow he was back inside my house. I retreated to my bedroom, locking the door and barricading it with a chair. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely text Mason, begging him to come immediately. Neil started knocking softly at first, then harder. His voice floated through the door, calm and unnervingly cheerful. "Why are you hiding? We were going to play." My blood ran cold. This wasn't a joke. He was serious. Minutes or hours passed. I could hear him pacing, muttering to himself. Then he laughed. A low, chilling laugh that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. I tried to focus on breathing, on staying quiet, but my mind raced with every possible outcome. He could break the door. He could come in. And I was utterly alone, defenseless. Finally, headlights flooded the front of the house. Mason had come back with his older brother. They kicked the door open seconds later. Neil froze, staring at them, still grinning like he had won some private game. They grabbed him, struggled, and dragged him out into the night. He didn't scream, didn't resist. He just laughed softly, looking back at me, eyes wide and empty. The police came again. Neil was taken away, finally, but the fear didn't leave me. Every creak, every shadow, every stranger on the street reminded me of that night. The way someone you trust, or think you trust, can suddenly become unpredictable, dangerous, and utterly frightening. I couldn't shake it for weeks. And even now, years later, I feel my chest tighten when I think about that grin, the knives, and the moment I realized just how close I had come to something I couldn't imagine surviving. I was 15 the first time my parents trusted me to stay overnight at my aunt's house alone. It wasn't far from our place, a quiet suburban home with too many windows and not enough neighbors. My aunt was visiting relatives out of state, and I was supposed to feed her cat and sleep there for one night before my parents picked me up in the morning. I didn't mind. I liked the quiet. Around 9, I got a message from Eric. He was my aunt's neighbor, someone I'd known for years. He'd helped fix bikes, carried groceries, smiled at every family barbecue. He asked if everything was okay over there, said he saw lights on and wanted to check in. I didn't think twice. I told him I was fine, just staying the night. He replied almost immediately, "Good. I'll stop by for a minute, just to make sure you're safe." When he knocked, I hesitated longer than I should have. Something about the timing felt off. Still, I opened the door. Eric smelled like cigarettes and something sharp, metallic. His smile lingered too long. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. At first, the conversation was normal. Too normal. He asked about school, about my parents' schedule, about how long I'd be alone. Each question tightened something in my chest. I noticed his eyes wandering, not at me exactly, but around the house. The locks, the hallway, the stairs. He sat down instead of leaving. Then he stood up and closed the front door behind him, twisting the lock with a quiet click. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. But my hands were sweating and my heart wouldn't slow down. Eric's voice dropped. He said it wasn't good for kids to be alone, said people could take advantage of that. He stepped closer. I backed up. He smiled again, but this time there was nothing friendly about it. I said I needed to use the bathroom and slipped down the hallway, locking myself inside and shaking as I texted my mom. No signal. I could hear his footsteps outside, slow and patient. He knocked once, softly. "Come on," he said. "I just want to talk." That was when I realized he wasn't here to check on me. He never was. And I was completely alone in that house with him. I held my breath, pressed against the bathroom door, listening. Eric was pacing. The floorboards creaked under his weight. His voice floated through the wood. "You don't need to be scared. I'm just here to help." The wrongness of the words made my stomach twist. I knew better. Every instinct screamed at me that he had crossed the line. Minutes dragged. I needed a plan. I couldn't just stay hidden forever. I waited for him to move away from the bathroom and then slipped out quietly, keeping my back to the wall. My phone was dead, the charger in the living room. I risked it, running across the carpet, glancing at the hall. Eric was standing there, blocking the way, smiling that same sick, patient smile. "You're fast," he said, "but it's no use hiding." Panic surged. I darted past him and ran upstairs, bolting into a guest room. I locked the door and grabbed the baseball bat my aunt kept for emergencies. My hands were trembling violently, my chest aching. I could hear him moving below, whispering my name, slow and deliberate, like he knew exactly how terrified I was. I remembered the window. Small, almost inaccessible, but it could be a way out. I climbed onto the sill and shoved it open, forcing my body through. My heart leapt as I fell onto the bushes outside. Pain shot through my ankle, but I kept running, not daring to look back. From the corner of my eye, I saw him at the window, grinning down at me. He didn't chase immediately. He just watched, like he was enjoying the game. The street was empty, silent except for my gasping breaths. I ran to the main road and flagged down a car. The driver, startled, let me in. I called my mom as soon as I was safe. She promised she would come immediately and that the police were on the way. Eric was arrested later that night, caught in his car outside the house, but the memory stayed with me. Even now, years later, I can hear the slow creak of a floorboard or the soft turning of a doorknob, and I feel that same panic rising. The person you know, the one you trust, can become the very thing you fear the most. And for a long time after, I couldn't be alone in a house without double-checking every door, every window, every shadow. Some people, I learned, don't need to be strangers to be dangerous. And the ones who smile, while hiding their intentions, are the scariest of all. I was 16 when my parents left me alone for an entire weekend for the first time. They trusted me. Too much, maybe. The house felt different the moment their car disappeared down the street. Bigger, quieter, like it was holding its breath. I ordered food, locked the doors, and told myself everything would be fine. Around 11, the power flickered. Just once. Enough to make my stomach tighten. I checked my phone, no storm warning, no outage alerts. When the light steadied, I laughed it off and went back to my room, headphones on, volume low. I didn't want to feel alone. That's when I heard it. A dull thud from downstairs. Not loud, not sudden. Like something heavy being set down carefully. I paused the music and listened. Silence followed, long enough for me to doubt myself. Then came another sound, metal scraping against metal. Slow, controlled. I crept to my bedroom door and opened it just enough to see the hallway. The front door was still locked. The alarm panel blinked green. Everything looked normal, and that somehow made it worse. Another noise came from the kitchen. A drawer. Opening, my heart started racing. No one was supposed to be there. I texted my dad. No response. I called my mom. Straight to voicemail. I backed into my room and locked the door, my hands shaking. I grabbed the only thing I could find, a heavy desk lamp, and stood there listening. Footsteps moved across the floor below me, not rushed, not sloppy. Whoever it was knew exactly what they were doing. Then I heard glass crack, a window. I realized the front door didn't matter anymore. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Someone was inside my house, going through my things, taking their time. I crouched behind my bed, barely breathing, trying to remember if my door could hold if they tried it. That's when the footsteps stopped. Right outside my room. The handle turned once. Slowly. And I knew hiding wouldn't last forever. I stayed crouched behind my bed, gripping the lamp like a weapon, listening as the doorknob rattled. My stomach was in knots. Whoever was outside wasn't just searching, they were enjoying it. Slowly, deliberately, the door creaked open. I froze. The intruder stepped inside. It wasn't a shadow or a prankster, it was a man. Mid-30s tall, with eyes that seemed to scan me like I was property. My breath caught. He didn't speak, just moved, dragging something across the carpet. A box. Probably electronics, judging by the clinking. I thought about running, about screaming, but every plan dissolved into panic. He was closer now, moving with calm precision, looking through drawers, rifling through my dresser. I pressed myself against the wall, hoping he wouldn't notice the slight shadow of me behind the bed. Then he froze, head tilted, listening. I realized he must have heard the slight whimper that escaped me. I tightened my grip on the lamp. This was it. If he saw me, I had no idea what he might do. The sound of sirens pierced the night. My parents had called the police when I didn't respond to texts. The intruder hesitated. For a second, I thought I might be safe. But then his hand went for the doorknob. I threw the lamp with all my strength. It hit him square on the chest. He stumbled back, cursing, and that bought me just enough time to sprint past him. I bolted through the hallway, tripping over the carpet, and made it to the back door. Outside, the street was flooded with red and blue lights. Officers were already surrounding the house. He tried to run. One officer tackled him to the ground, another cuffed him. I collapsed on the lawn, shaking, sobbing, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Everything I owned, every drawer he'd rifled through, every personal item, gone or tossed aside. But I was alive. Even now, I can't forget the sound of slow footsteps in my empty house, the scraping of metal against furniture, or the cold, calculating stare of someone who thought my home was theirs for the taking. I learned something that night. Walls, locks, alarms, they mean nothing if someone knows exactly what they're doing. And some dangers aren't random. They're calculated, patient, and terrifyingly close. I never stayed home alone after that. Every creak, every shadow, every quiet knock at the door reminds me that some threats are closer than we think. And no matter how safe a place feels, it only takes one person with intent to change everything. I was 14 when my parents left me alone overnight for the first time. It wasn't a big deal, just one night while they stayed at a hotel out of town. The house was familiar, quiet, safe. I'd lived there my whole life. I told myself nothing bad could happen. Around 10, I realized I'd forgotten my charger in the car. My phone was already at 15%. I hesitated, then grabbed the keys and stepped outside. The driveway light flickered on, washing everything in pale yellow. I opened the car, grabbed the charger, and rushed back inside. That was the mistake. I didn't lock the door behind me. I noticed it maybe 20 minutes later when the house felt different. Not louder, not darker, just wrong. Like when you walk into a room and know someone's been there, even if nothing looks disturbed. I checked the door, unlocked. My chest tightened. I told myself I must have forgotten to lock it earlier. Still, I locked it now and checked the windows, trying to calm down. Everything else was secure. I laughed nervously at myself and went back to my room. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from a local delivery app. "Your order is nearby." I hadn't ordered anything. I opened the app, confused. An address popped up mine. The order was marked as delivered. My heart started pounding. I checked outside through my bedroom window. No car, no person, just the empty street. Another buzz, a message this time. Door was open. Left it inside. Inside where? I crept into the hallway, every step slow, careful. The house was silent, too silent. I reached the kitchen and froze. On the counter sat a small paper bag. Fresh, still warm. I hadn't heard anyone come in. I hadn't heard anyone leave. My phone buzzed again. Next time, don't forget to lock up. That was when I realized my mistake hadn't just been careless. Someone had noticed, and they knew I was alone. I stood frozen, staring at the bag. My hands shook so badly I could barely open it. Inside were small items from my room, keys, my wallet, even my favorite notebook. How had they gotten in? I locked the front door immediately, double-checked the windows, and pressed myself against the wall. My phone buzzed again. "See you soon," I swallowed, heart hammering. Whoever it was wasn't done. They were playing, watching, testing. Every instinct screamed at me to call my parents, but the signal was weak, my battery low. I needed another plan. I remembered the back door. I could climb over the fence and run to the streetlight at the corner. But as soon as I moved toward it, the lights flickered again. Not the house lights, the street lights outside. Someone was out there. I ran back to my room, slammed the door, locked it, and grabbed the heavy desk lamp. I sat on the floor, leaning against the bed, listening. Every creak, every soft thump downstairs made my stomach twist. They were inside. Somehow, despite every precaution, they were inside. Minutes passed. Hours felt like minutes. Then a knock on my bedroom window. Slow, intentional, I froze. I couldn't see who it was, just the silhouette against the glass. My phone buzzed again. "Next time, don't go outside." I understood then. My small mistake, leaving the door unlocked, had set off a chain I couldn't stop. Everything else, every careful move, was irrelevant. They had mapped the house, knew my routines, and were making me realize exactly how powerless I was. I stayed in that room, clutching the lamp until I heard sirens. Someone, my neighbor, my parents, had finally called the police after noticing the unusual activity. The figure outside ran, slipping into the shadows, vanishing before the officers could arrive. The police found no evidence inside beyond the bag and missing items. Nothing else was disturbed. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I double-locked every door, installed alarms, but the fear lingered. I knew my mistake had marked me. One small lapse of care, and someone had invaded my life, testing boundaries and leaving a reminder of their presence. Even now, years later, I triple-check every lock, every window. Every time I leave the house, I wonder if someone is waiting, patient, ready to exploit the tiniest error. One mistake, one unlocked door, it had been enough. Some lessons, I learned, are carved into you through fear. And mine was clear. Carelessness can have consequences far bigger than you imagine. Did you survive all 5 stories? If so, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. I want to know, which story gave you the biggest scare? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and maybe your story will inspire the next video.